Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing another battle of the brands. So my last one I did Maybelline versus Milani, and in that video I asked you to let me know which brands I should put head to head next, and this was by far the most popular answer, and that is e.l.f. versus Wet n Wild. A lot of you guys felt like the brands are very similar. I wanted to put two brands together that I thought would be a really difficult decision and a good competition. So I think e.l.f. and Wet n Wild is definitely a good matchup. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll start with the foundation category. So when it comes to foundations, Wet n Wild definitely has a few that I really like. Their foundation stick, the Photo Focus foundation stick, is amazing. That foundation stick is one of my favorites. It actually rivals the Tom Ford foundation stick. I feel like they have a really similar finish. So that one is definitely my favorite foundation stick, whether drugstore or high-end. And another great one from Wet n Wild is their new tinted hydrator. I really like this one too. It has great coverage, but it feels like a tinted moisturizer, so it's really the best of both worlds. Also, their Photo Focus Dewy Foundation, I really enjoy that one as well. I wasn't too big a fan of the original Photo Focus. I just felt like it was a little too dry for me, but I know a lot of people love that one as well. So I think Wet n Wild has some really good options. Then over on the e.l.f. side, they do have the new Camo CC Cream, which I think is pretty good. I'm actually wearing that one today. It's a little bit on the drier side, but not too bad. I think it's going to be great going into the spring and summer, especially. Again, it has great coverage, so I really like that one. But honestly, that's the first foundation that I've really liked from e.l.f. I do love the texture and the finish of their Flawless finish. I feel like I'm saying finish a lot. Flawless Finish foundation. It has a beautiful texture. It sits so nicely on the skin, but it's so heavily perfumed that I cannot wear it. And normally perfumed products don't bother me. Like, I can wear the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer with no issues, but that one, it's so heavy and you just smell it all day, and I really, really wish they would take the fragrance out of it because it's a beautiful foundation otherwise, but I just can't get past the smell. So I haven't tried anything else from e.l.f. I'm not sure if they have any other foundations or if those two were it, but those are the only ones I've tried. So I'm gonna have to give this category to Wet n Wild just because they have more foundations that I really like, and I just think overall they have a bigger range. Next up, when it comes to primers, I feel like neither company is really known for primers. I mean, maybe e.l.f. with their putty primer. I think that one's probably the most famous primer out of all the ones that both of these brands have. They also have the Jelly Pop one, which I actually haven't tried. So if you guys like that one, definitely let me know if that's something that I should check out. But then when it comes to Wet n Wild, I know they have primer sticks. I think I tried one a while back. I don't think I was very impressed with it. They also have Photo Focus primers. I think I tried one of those a while back as well. And again, it just really wasn't super impressive. So I think for me personally, I'm gonna give this category to e.l.f. just because of the putty primer. But really, when it comes to primers, I don't feel like that's a super strong category for either one of these brands. Next, let's talk concealer. So for Wet n Wild, we have the Photo Focus concealer, which is really nice, and also their new Incognito concealer, which I love. That one is so, so good as well. And then for e.l.f., we have the Hydrating Camo concealer, which is pretty good. It's not my favorite concealer in the world, but it's okay. And then they also have the Camo concealer, which for me personally was way too dry under my eyes. And then they have the Flawless Brightening Wand, which is sort of like YSL's Touche Eclat. And that one, I think if that's something that you're looking for, like just brightening under the eye, it does a really nice job, but it wasn't my favorite either. Usually I'm looking to hide a little bit of something under there, so it didn't cover enough for me personally. So I think for concealer, I'm gonna give this category to Wet n Wild as well, just because I think the Incognito one is amazing, and also I think the Photo Focus one is good too. All right, so the next category would be blush, and at one point in time, I would have said that Wet n Wild had the best blush formula at the drugstore. Their Color Icon blushes back in the day were amazing, and I regularly featured them as a favorite blush formula, but something happened. They changed the packaging, and I did try one or two of the new ones, and they reformulated them as well. At least it seems that way, because they are not the same as they used to be. I feel like they're more chalky, they're harder to pick up than they were before. They used to have this really rich velvety texture, and they don't feel like that anymore, so I'm not really sure what happened there, but it definitely was disappointing. disappointing. I know Wet n Wild also has blush sticks, cream blush sticks, and if I remember correctly, I think I tried one back a long time ago and I thought it was okay. I liked it, I think, but it's hard for me to remember. So really, I think my biggest memory when it comes to Wet n Wild and blush were the color icons, and they seem to have completely changed them. So on the e.l.f. side of things, they do have so many great blushes now. They have the new putty blushes, the cream blushes, which are so fantastic. I wear those constantly. I'm wearing them in the video today. I'm wearing Bora Bora, and they're just so great. They dry to a powdery finish and they don't disturb your foundation. They last all day. They're so good. Also, their primer infused blushes are amazing as well. They have, I would say those are kind of a dupe for the Bare Minerals Gen Nude blushes. They're very similar in texture. Again, they last all day even though they're a powder, and I just love them. Also, the bite-sized blush palettes with the little highlighter and blush, those are fantastic as well. I really like those. And also their blush palettes. Those are iconic, and again, a great formula, great price, and some different colors to choose from. So I think e.l.f. is definitely the clear winner here when it comes to blushes. I think even if Wet n Wild's color icon formula was still good, e.l.f. just has so many more options, and they have just so many great formulas to choose from, so many great colors. So I'm definitely giving this category to e.l.f. for sure. Next, when it comes to highlighter, Wet n Wild has the Mega Glow highlighters, which I have to say are a fantastic highlighter at the drugstore. They're so creamy and smooth and just really intense. If you like an intense highlight, I think they can compete with some of the more expensive highlighters for sure. Also, they have the Hello Halo liquid highlighter, which is really nice. They have the Mega Glow sticks as well, and they have jelly highlighters. So I think Wet n Wild just has a huge range of highlighters in many different forms, whether you like a more subtle highlight or something a little bit more bold. I think you can kind of find something for everybody with those. And when it comes to e.l.f., they have the baked highlighters, which aren't my favorite highlight. They're a little bit on the dry side. I think if you wet them, they're a little better, but then they get to be kind of tricky to apply to your face. Also, they have a highlighter palette. I haven't tried this one out, but if you guys have, I'd love to hear what you think of it. And then they have a couple of different options. They have single highlighters, they have the metallic flare, the jelly highlights. They also have liquid highlighters. Unfortunately, I haven't tried a lot of highlighters from e.l.f., so it's hard for me to make a comparison in this category. So I think just by default, I would give it to Wet n Wild just because I have tried more from them and really enjoy their formulas a lot. But if there are some really standout ones from e.l.f., let us know down below, and whether you think those can compete or maybe beat the ones from Wet n Wild. Next up, when it comes to bronzer, again, I think Wet n Wild had such a good thing going with their bronzers. They had the color icon, the big giant bronzers in Reserve Your Cabana and Ticket to Brazil. Those were beautiful. I really enjoyed those a lot. And then they've since kind of changed their color icon bronzers to these really shimmery ones that almost feel like they have a cream formula, and that would be okay with me as far as the texture, but I think they're just way too shimmery and too glowy. I really liked what they had going before, where it just had a slight bit of glow and kind of gave you like more of an airbrushed finish than this like really glittery, shimmery type of finish that they have now. So I feel like they took a good thing again and just kind of made it worse. So when it comes to e.l.f., they have the primer infused bronzer, which I think is really nice. They also have a bronzer palette. I don't remember loving that one just because I think none of the colors were really perfect for me. Even though they give you a few, it was kind of, they were all a little too warm, I think, if I remember correctly. They also have those aqua duos with the blush and the cream bronzer, and those are actually really nice. I loved the cream bronzer in those and the cream blush. I thought those were beautiful. So I think for me, while I don't completely love the bronzers from either brand, I'm gonna give this one to e.l.f. just because, again, I think they have more to choose from, and I think they're a little bit better than the Wet n Wild ones, at least for me. Next, when it comes to mascara, I don't think either one of these brands has some really standout mascaras. In fact, I think I've been disappointed more often than not from both Wet n Wild and e.l.f. when it comes to their mascaras. So I'm just gonna call this one a tie because I can't think of one from either of those two brands that I think is really stand out or that was really amazing. I just felt like they were always okay. So yeah, I think we're just gonna go with a tie on that one. Next, for eyeshadow palettes. Okay, so here's where it gets kind of crazy because both brands have tons of eyeshadow palettes, but let's start with Wet n Wild first. Their original Color Icon palettes, like the Comfort Zone one, for example, those were the best at the drugstore at one point in time. I think the formula, even by today's standards, is still really good. I still have my original Comfort Zone and I love it. Then they reformulated those. They came out with the new 10 pan palettes that had more transition shades in them, and those were okay. I don't think they were as good as the original, but I felt like they were decent. Now they've reformulated once again, and I really do not like the newer ones. I find them to be really powdery. When you put them on your eyes, they just kind of blend away to nothing. And the shimmer shades are okay. They're hit and miss. Some of them are good, some of them not so good. But I just think Wet n Wild has gone from a really stellar eyeshadow formula, and it's just kind of consistently gone downhill since. Where e.l.f., I think they're the opposite. They used to be just okay. I think their original eyeshadows were not the best. And then they had those 10 pan palettes like Mad for Matte. Those are okay. They're not, again, my favorite eyeshadow formula, but I think they were workable and they were pretty good. And now they have the little bite-sized palettes. I'm actually wearing the Rosewater one today, and I love those. And then e.l.f. also has their bigger 18 pan palettes that are awesome. I think the New Classics one disappointed me the most. That one, I just felt like the pigmentation wasn't there and the shimmer shades lacked intensity. They were just kind of blah, but the Earth and Ocean palette is beautiful. The Retro Paradise one is also really good. So I think e.l.f. has come a long way with their eyeshadows and they've just gotten better, whereas Wet n Wild has kind of gone downhill a little bit more. So when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, I definitely have to go with e.l.f. on this one. Okay, so next, moving on to lips. Let's talk about Wet n Wild first. They have their Mega Last matte lipsticks. They also have the Silk Finish. They have the Liquid Catsuit, which has been around a while. Not a big fan of matte liquid lipsticks, but from what I've heard from you guys, it's a really good formula. They also have the Mega Slicks glosses, and they have a ton of lip products. I think a lot of Wet n Wild's lip products don't necessarily appeal to me because I want to say a lot of that is packaging. I think especially when it comes to their bullet lipsticks, they just haven't changed the packaging in so many years and they look kind of old and outdated and kind of cheap as well. Whereas with e.l.f., you have the Sheer Slick lipsticks. I'm actually wearing the Black Cherry one today. Those are such nice lipsticks. You also have the Ride or Die lip balms, which are amazing, and the Seriously Satin lipsticks as well. So again, I think I'm gonna have to go with e.l.f. in this category just because I think they do have a ton of different options and they also just have a more modern feel to them. The formulas have a little bit more of a modern feel. They've changed them up more recently, whereas I think Wet n Wild's lipsticks, a lot of them are kind of stuck in the past. So I'm gonna give this category to e.l.f. So then when it comes to eyeliners, brows, and powders, I really haven't tried a lot from either brand to be able to form an opinion or to even do a comparison, because those are just categories that for whatever reason I don't really think of these brands when it comes to like a powder. Not that I even wear powder that often, or eyeliners or brow products. I don't know why. I guess I just kind of have my drugstore favorites and I stick with them. So I would love to hear from you guys with those categories. If there are things from e.l.f. or Wet n Wild that you think I should try for next time, definitely let me know down in the comments below. But that's pretty much it. So if I tally up everything, I have 4 wins from Wet n Wild and 6 from e.l.f. out of the 10 categories that I had. So e.l.f. is the winner. It was really, really close. Again, I think Wet n Wild shines when it comes to complexion products and also with highlighters, and then e.l.f. shines more when it comes to blushes and eyeshadow palettes and lip products. So anyway, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below and what your favorite products are from the brands and whether you have the same opinions as me when it comes to these or if you feel completely different. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so I know that I should do more, and also also, I'd love to hear more future matchup ideas down in the comments below as well. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you all in my next one. Take care, guys. Bye.